Okay, everyone back, I hope. So we talked about the fact that in Sokotri, there is this very interesting opposition between the vowel pattern, not only in the past, like Arabic is Hebrew and so on, and in the subjunctive, like all others, but also in the future. In some modern South Arabian languages, like I think Omani Mehri, the future of this form has become almost identical to the subjunctive. So this vowel has dropped out, and we have lidkor, yidkor, or something, lidkor, yidkor, or something like that, which is interesting, but the first form, of course, still has this. Yep. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and the last thing for today, is the passive structures. So does anyone want to guess how a passive is made in Akkadian or Ethio-Semitic or Aramaic, a passive verb? So there's only one way pretty much to make a passive verb in these languages, and it is just adding a T, pretty much, at least usually. So since this is such a wide distribution of T used as a passive voice, we have to ascribe it to something very ancient. But in the other languages, we have different passive stuff. So in Central Semitic, does anyone want to say or remember or? Okay. Anyway, in Arabic, there's a passive voice for every verb. You can make almost every verb a passive voice, and you take it and you just change the vowels. So fa'ala becomes fu'ila, and yaf'ulu or yaf'ilu becomes yuf'alu. So you just change the vocals, the vocalic pattern. In biblical Hebrew, we also had this for G, but in modern Hebrew, we only have this for the D and the H stems. So for example, in biblical Hebrew, the G, luqah, yuqah. It was taken, it will be taken. It's almost the same as the fu'ila yuf'alu. It probably was fu'ala yuf'alu or something like that. And in Ugaritic and Old South Arabian, we don't have vowels written, so it's quite difficult, but it is very, very strongly believed that these languages also had this internal passive voice. Okay. In modern South Arabian, if we take Sokotri, for example, once again, it's the exact same thing as Central Semitic. So this vocalic pattern is simply shifted from what we had earlier, Dekr or Ferod. It becomes Sirik. Sorry. So there's only one passive vowel class or something like that. So you don't have a different passive for each vowel class. You have only one. Lisrok is almost identical to the active one, and Yasobrok. Whether or not this is evidence for subgrouping of modern South Arabian with Central Semitic, or at least a little bit closer to Central Semitic than Ethio-Semitic is very, very controversial and interesting. No one really knows. And also the vowel developments in modern South Arabian are a little bit difficult to understand sometimes. So that is that. We have 10 more minutes. We can start talking about phonology, or we can have any questions or anything.
I would have a question regarding the T prefix slash infix of the GT stem and like the other T stems, obviously. In some stems, this prefix precedes the first radical, and in other languages, it succeeds it. So it would seem logical to me that the one where it precedes it is possibly the older form and it was a prefix originally, or what is the assumed history of this morpheme?
Very, very interesting. I really don't know. Linguists have a problem with infixes because they kind of don't fit in general linguistic logic. So usually they are considered to be something like a prefix that was indented or something like that, just metathesized with the first radical. So it could be, I don't know. I like the system in Hebrew where we always precede the T to the first radical, unless the first radical is a sibilant, and then we proceed the first radical to the T, which is nice. Also in Akkadian, it's completely opposite. Very, very confusing. I have no idea. It's also nice that in Arabic, the GT is an infix and the TD is a prefix. So maybe that's more ancient, or maybe not. I really genuinely have no idea. It's very, very interesting. And it's also very interesting that Akkadian has this GT everywhere, like the T infixation everywhere. I don't know.
Thank you.
Wish I could add more. Anything else? Any question about the assignment, or I don't know, anything? Okay, we can just start with a very basic introduction of a few minutes. The moment. Sorry, just a sec. I don't know what's going on. My computer is not enjoying this. Just a second, sorry. Any questions in the meantime while I try to make my computer work better? No, really nothing. Fine. Okay. So phonology. Just a very, very brief intro to this for 7 minutes. There are several different famous phonological processes that we can just mention. The most common, or one of the most common ones, is assimilation, when one sound assimilates to another sound. Harmony is basically the same thing, only it happens over a larger domain. So assimilating sounds must be adjacent, and harmonic sounds, I don't know, are not adjacent. So it's when one sound assimilates to another sound, but they're not next to each other. And there are some examples here. Dissimilation is when one sound makes itself more different from another sound. It doesn't matter if they're adjacent or not. Usually they're not. And coalescence is, as I've already talked about, when two sounds become one together. Any question about that? Just kind of grocery list of some of the basic terms we're going to use. So when we talk about phonology, the basic thing to talk about is a feature. So each segment or each sound, we look at it as composed of different features, as really a bank or a sack of different features. So for example, in vowels, these features can be high, or the negation of that not high. For example, high vowels e, u, u. These are high vowels, which means that the mouth is closed or almost closed when they are pronounced. Back vowels, which refers to the position of the tongue, like u, o, a. Round vowels, which refers to the position of the lips, or if we round them or not. Low vowels or open vowels when the mouth is more open, like ah and ah. And there are some other features. RTR is more like in English, it's a complicated one. It refers to the position of the root of the tongue. Never mind about that. Is everything clear? We're not going to talk about vowels a lot, of course, because they're just vowels. So what's nice about features is that we can, like, the reason we use features to classify segments is because we like to think about language as a logical system, which isn't, but it's nice, like, if we use only for example, for the Akkadian vowels, there are 4 Akkadian vowels, a, e, I, u. We only need 2 features to distinguish. Is that clear why? We only need 2 features, the feature high and the feature back, to distinguish these vowels. And then, like, it kind of makes the process more economical. Like the fewer features there are, or the fewer features you need, the more economical, the quicker you can identify the vowel. Like, if you have to listen to 5 different acoustic cues, it's harder than if you have to listen to 2 or something like that. And this is what these are. These are acoustic cues. So high, I refer to the way we articulate these sounds, but that has nothing, or it has a lot to do with the way they sound, but it does not describe the way they sound. So when we use it in a language, we also have to address the way these sounds sound, which is in an acoustic way. So a sound is composed, a linguistic sound is composed first and foremost from the voice of the person realizing it, if it's a voiceless sound, then before and after it. And the rest of the linguistic sounds are mostly what we call overtones, or higher acoustic values that accompany to the voice of the speaker. It's a little bit complicated and weird, so I'm not going to talk about a lot about that, but it's called acoustic phonetics. And it's very interesting, and that is how we actually distinguish different sounds, only through acoustic cues. So if the second formant is higher or the third formant is lower, then, and so on. Consonant features can be divided onto 3 groups: place features, which refer to the place of articulation of the consonant; manner, which refers to a bunch of things; and other things. So place features are the most simple ones, of course. You can be labial, you can be coronal, you can be dorsal. Labial is created with the lips, coronal with the tip or blade of the tongue, and dorsal with the back of the tongue, sometimes also pharyngeal, which is with the root of the tongue. And usually glottals are considered to have no place feature. Like, they do have a place of articulation, it is the glottis, but in phonology, we only divide them onto these 4 groups of labial, coronal, dorsal, and none. Of course, one sound can have 2 of them. For example, w, as we said, is both labial and dorsal. Okay, is that clear? These are place features. More complicated or advanced place features are like high, which means palatalized; anterior, which means more to the front; and distributed, which refers to the point of contact between the tongue and the other, or the main articulator and the secondary articulator. And manner features, which we will finish with, I guess. I will probably repeat all of this in the next class because it is also quite interesting and complicated. For example, sonorants, that is a manner feature that differs all of the vowels and sonorant sounds, which are approximants, rhotics, and nasals, from all the other sounds, which are called obstruents, so fricatives and affricates and stops. Laterals, which have a lateral release instead of a medial release. That means, for example, L, we have full blocking of the airway in the middle, but there is an airflow from the sides. Nasals, which can also be considered plus like sonorants, which aren't continuant. That's a little bit complicated, but nasals have a nasal release, of course. Continuance is sounds that we can continue producing, like they allow the airflow to continue, so they are not stops. Nasals are technically stops, but that's a different story. Delayed release is what differentiates affricates from stops. So both stops and affricates are minus cont, but affricates are plus delayed release. And voicing is, of course, the use or non-use of the vocal chords. I don't know. We can stop here. If there's any question, please let me know. Thank you so much for listening and for coming every time. I'm really shocked every time. And have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. And please talk to me if you want to do an assignment or do a talk and make a date. See ya.